Hello and welcome. So, the recent events around Shattered Space have me rather concerned for Elder Scrolls 6. And why is this? It is not the content of the DLC, nor the actions of Bethesda. It is primarily, my concern lies with the journalistic industry covering games on YouTube and other social media apps. Why am I concerned by this? Is because this journalistic industry, it very much shapes the discourse, and I, over the past year, have found it to be extremely toxic and misleading. But we'll get into that in a bit here. Just to explain my background with Bethesda, I've been playing their games since 2002. I've played Elder Scrolls 3 all the way through Elder Scrolls 5, including the DLCs, a little bit of Elder Scrolls Online. I've played Fallout 3 all the way through Far Harbor. Rather thoroughly enjoyed those games. And I'm overall a fan of their products. Some games I don't like as much as others, but I do generally enjoy their games. But why am I concerned about this discourse is because it is extremely toxic and it is extremely pervasive within the fan groups, and it is not very productive discourse. But to kind of show what I'm talking about, we are going to look at one particular story that recently came out. I don't think it's particularly newsworthy, in my opinion. And we are going to look at a larger YouTube creator and how they covered this news story, and kind of highlight the issues currently going on within gaming journalism. Now, this seems to be an issue with Bethesda going back all the way probably to about 2017, with what I would call a toxic news journalistic apparatus where everything is skewed towards the negative with Bethesda, and this is done by omitting facts from news stories to give a negative slant, or sometimes just completely misleading people. And it's very not healthy for the gaming community as a whole, nor is it healthy for the Starfield fan community. The discourse that is generated by this can be very disruptive and doesn't help further the improvement of the game. So let's get into it. What we're going to cover is the recent spat between Emil, the lead writer of Bethesda, and a disgruntled fan. So this starts with a release of an interview that Emil did. This was released on September 30th. I'm going to go ahead and just show the headline of the article. I'll also link it in the description below so you can read it for yourself. So this is a marketing interview. So this is typically done by basically every industry when they're releasing a new product. Typically they'll get like a lead designer, something like that. They'll have them interview with a news outlet, and during that time what they're going to do is they're going to pat the employees on the back and say how good of a job they did, and they're also going to upsell their product and basically say how good of a product they have. This is nothing to be alarmed about or outraged about, and it is no way a response to criticism, seeing as it's released on the launch date, and the interview was probably conducted days or weeks before the launch. How could it be a response to criticism when it was done before there was any criticism? So, just to move on here, what happens after this is released? Emil goes ahead and tweets this out on the 2nd. He was likely busy probably on the 30th and the 1st with the launch. Tweets it out on the 2nd, basically like, hey, I had a really good interview. Normal, vanilla pudding kind of tweet. And a Bethesda fan did get rather upset in his comments and posted a 15 tweet long reply. We're going to read the full thing. Most journalists that did cover this story ignored that tweet or downplayed it, but it does contain very critical information that is going to kind of give us the full context of what Emil was replying to, which is important. You know, if you remove the context of who he was speaking to and who he was replying to, you can completely change the news story and make it seem negative. This is garbage journalism, by the way. You should be reporting the facts, all the facts, and let your viewers kind of decide for themselves. But we're going to go ahead and get into it and read it in just a second. 1. Hey Emil, read the interview since it's been circulating a lot in gamer review circles lately. To be honest, this is going to be adding fuel to an already smoldering fire amongst disappointed players. It reads as if you and your team are patting yourselves on the head. It's a pat on the head that, based on reviews, may not be warranted. I'll admit I have never played it yet, but I can't justify its purchase with its current cost under the current reviews. The tone of the interview, however, is very tone deaf to the wider community. You highlighted that Bethesda created a handcraft space reminiscent of previous Bethesda works, in contrast to the procedurally generated base game. This only reinforces the issues with the base game and further points out the lack of understanding and engagement from Bethesda. You reiterated in the interview that your team poured a lot of creativity into Shattered Space. Fans, even critical ones, don't doubt the passion being put into your games, but you keep making the same mistakes from previous titles and justifying unpopular decisions in this one. A handcrafted space doesn't mean much when it still suffers from what reviews are critical of poorly written quests, bugs, a lack of meaningful content, and under-delivered material. These reviews are following a pattern of similar issues with Bethesda titles. This is exacerbated when bugs, poorly written quests, lack of meaningful content, and an oversaturation of procedurally generated materials has yet to be addressed in the base game, and comments from both you and Todd Howard have been dismissive of these issues. I say this as a longtime Bethesda fan trying to engage with you. I am concerned with the direction you are going in. It seems like you are doubling down, protecting choices that at best have had mixed reviews while ignoring issues your fan base has been pointing out for years. No one wants to see Starfield fail, but your fans would like to see the level of engagement companies like CDPR had with correcting issues with Cyberpunk 2077, whose use of DLCs were an example of how to re-verify issues in the base game. I do not want to end on a somewhat possible note. Although Shattered Space is no Far Harbor, the fact that you are responsible for creating content to that degree does demonstrate an ability to do so. A lot of your fans would just like to see that level of content redirected into addressing the issues of the game, and to feel like their concerns are not being dismissed. So let's talk about this response. I guess the first thing we can acknowledge here is that this person is going based purely off of secondhand knowledge of Shattered Space. They admit that they have not played it at all. So knowledge of the game is based entirely off of reviews probably they saw online. Secondly, they seem to have a lot of issues with bugs. Majority of the bugs in Starfield have been corrected. Like occasionally I'll see a bug, but usually stuff's not like game breaking for me. It's usually something silly. As far as the procedural generation goes, I didn't really have an issue with it. The only thing I would like is more hostile locations inserted to the procedural generation. I've heard tons of opinions about like maybe they should reduce it down to 5 planets and have them completely handcrafted. This is just a silly thought. I don't think you actually thought this through. I don't think you realize how large the planets are. You could take every point of interest and fit it on probably about 4 tiles if you were just going to place it once. So if you want a completely handcrafted game with no procedural generation, it's going to be not a space game, unfortunately. It's just not going to be a space game. Or it's going to be a restricted space game, like where you land on a small section of a planet and a small section of a planet here. You're not going to have access to an entire planet. So that's just, it's not feasible whatsoever. Just the amount of manpower it would take to fill 10 planets, Bethesda would have to probably quintuple their payroll. It's absolutely not feasible, and frankly, I don't have an issue with the procedural generation, except for it could use more content in it. But that will come in time, and that's being done by a lot of modders right now are adding content to the procedural generation, and I'll get into that a little bit later when we go through like how journalists have responded to this and how they're reporting it, because I think it's rather disruptive to really good discourse that is happening in the community, especially the modding community, on how to rectify and resolve a lot of these issues that are caused by procedural generation. So there's that. We'll get into it in a little bit later, but let's go ahead and take a look at Emil's response to him. Hi, Stephen. Well, first of all, I appreciate you taking the time to passionately share your thoughts. I may not agree with everything you wrote, but I understand and appreciate where you're coming from. Twitter/X has never been a place for polite discourse, but I'd like to address what I can. I don't like leaving fans hanging. In fact, I generally say more than I should. We have a community team for a reason, but I think a bridge to the devs is important. First, the interview. As a design director, sometimes I'm asked or instructed to do interviews. I was happy to do that, to represent the designers and the studio, seeing how hard and passionately they worked on Shattered Space. They deserve nothing less. Optimism and excitability are pretty standard for interviews, and I'm generally pretty optimistic and excitable about games by nature. That said, my optimism is in no way meant to be mud in the eye of any dissatisfied fan. That's not how it works. I am also very proud of Shattered Space. We all are. Most of the quests and levels were done by designers who have worked on previous Bethesda games and DLCs, going all the way back to Morrowind. They're good at what they do, and it shows. If folks haven't played Shattered Space and they like Starfield, I think they're missing out. If folks have played Shattered Space and still don't like it, that makes me sad, honestly. Just know that we've also been hearing from plenty of people who love it. Maybe it's a game of expectations. Fans want a lot, and we do all we can to accommodate them. Here's what I can tell you. Nobody, and I mean nobody, at Bethesda is patting themselves on the back while ignoring our players. In addition to Shattered Space, we've also spent a lot of time this year addressing community concerns and making fixes. We'll continue to do so, and we will be listening to our fans every step of the way. We make these games for all of you. Starfield is a massive game, and it takes time for us to address things. We move as fast as we can, as safely as we can. Game development is always tricky, but with a game as big as Starfield, every fix could potentially break something else. To close, let me just say, I love games. I love Bethesda's games. I've been playing them since the Terminator days. All I or anyone here wants to do is make those games and then make them better. No ego, no arrogance, just a lot of hard work and appreciation for our fans. So, Emil responded same day to this person that was complaining about Shattered Space and had never played it before. My honest opinion, this is kind of like a case of Bethesda derangement syndrome. Being so passionate about something you've never played before, that you've read the article in review circles, tracked down the guy to his Twitter post, and then comment with a 15-comment tweet basically scolding him like as though he was a child. For what in the industry, or basically any industry, is a normal practice. Like if you have a big product launching, it could be a car or whatever, they'll do these marketing interviews before the launch and then release them launch day, kind of as this is basically a fancy ad. It's like he got mad over a commercial. But Emil actually took the time to respond to him, even though he did not buy the product, he did not play the product, and his knowledge of the product is completely secondhand knowledge. And to Emil's point, if you do like Starfield, you are going to like Shattered Space. I have yet to meet anyone who is a fan of Starfield and also does not like Shattered Space, and has actually tried it and played it. It is exactly what they told us they were going to give us. A Far Harbor-esque DLC where we have this little section that's kind of away from the game and it's completely handcrafted. And like Emil said, the quests in Shattered Space are very good. And I could name them and go through them in detail, but like the side quests have forking outcomes with multiple different endings to them. The side quests, mind you. Normally Bethesda games, the side quests are pretty straightforward for the most part, and what I found in Shattered Space was, for the most part, they had 2 to 4 different possible endings, sometimes even more, for the side quests. The main quest I found very enjoyable. I'm still not done with it yet. I have 10 hours logged on the main quest. I'm at the last quest, so I'm probably going to end up wrapping it up somewhere around 12 hours of gameplay, which is completely in line with Far Harbor. I am going to bloop something up on screen so you can see a long playthrough of Far Harbor and the runtime. This is a YouTube video. I'll link it in the comments below so you can watch and see. It's a long playthrough. It's about 12 hours, and that's what I'm doing right now. If you want to check out my live stream, it's right there. You can add up the numbers yourself if you want. But let's kind of move on past this. In my personal opinion, this whole entire ordeal is not really newsworthy, and we're going to be looking at one Luke Stevens and how he covered it, and the things he omitted from his coverage to give a negative bias towards Bethesda. So essentially, what he omitted is the tweet that Emil was responding to. So he covered the marketing interview, which, I mean, it's a marketing interview. You've seen one, you've seen all of them. It's just, you know, them patting each other on the back, going, "Good job, look how great this product is." Normal thing. He covers that, and then he goes right into the tweets Emil responded to, or not the ones he responded to, but his response tweets. He skips over the section on that fans' tweets, which I think is kind of pertinent. It's pertinent if we're saying that Bethesda ignores haters, that Emil took his time and responded same day to a person that admitted they had not played the DLC, but was extremely discontent with the DLC. But let's see how Luke covers it himself. So let's hear from the man.
Exploration boring. They played the game, they just didn't like it, and thought what they did previously with other games was way better. So it just, again, affirms that they have their head in the sand and are refusing to listen to critical feedback. And I think the expansion is a confirmation of that sentiment. And it's gotten so bad that they actually came out and made a statement where they said, and as the headline says, nobody, and I mean nobody at Bethesda, is patting themselves on the back while ignoring our players. Which, if you have to come out and say this, something's gone terribly wrong. He said, first, the interview. As the design director, sometimes I'm asked or instructed to do interviews. I was happy to do that to represent the designers and the studio. Seeing how hard and passionately they worked on Shattered Space, they deserve nothing less. Optimism and excitement are pretty standard for interviews, and I'm generally pretty optimistic and excitable about games by nature. That said, my optimism is in no way meant to be mud in the eye of any dissatisfied fan. That's not how it works. I think the key, though, my friend, is when you're in a position of leadership and the ship has run aground in a way, for you to be like, yeah, but we're gonna get right back out there, and we've had a great voyage so far, and a lot of people love the voyage, and the boat ride was so smooth until the last 5 minutes, but it's been great, and talk about the fresh air. Like, it just makes you seem out of touch, like you don't know what's going on. We've run aground, there is water pouring into the ship, maybe we deal with that instead of talking about how beautiful the seagulls were 20 minutes ago.
I'd just like to make note that in the beginning of the clip there, Luke is reviewing a different interview that was published on October 2nd. Now, we don't know when that interview was conducted. It might have been after the launch of Shattered Space, or it could have possibly been before the launch of Shattered Space. But that interview was not the interview that the original commenter was replying to. The original commenter was replying to the September 30th interview. And also make note that Luke just transitions right into Emil's response without even acknowledging that it was a response to another tweet, someone that didn't play the game, and he did respond same day to that person. That was October 8th, and the person admitted that they had never played Shattered Space, which is a lot better of a response than I would have had. But let's move on to the next clip.
He goes on, maybe it's a game of expectations. Fans want a lot, and we do all we can to accommodate them. Here's what I can tell you. Nobody, and I mean nobody, at Bethesda is patting themselves on the back while ignoring our players. But I think this is exactly the slippery bit, our players. I think that they hand wave away a lot of the critical feedback as people that don't even play the games. I have heard that from plenty of YouTubers and streamers and Twitter accounts that cover BGS stuff and tend to be very, very gentle on them, where they say, oh no, if you hate it, you're just like a hate grifter, or you don't play the games or whatever, so your opinion's invalid.
I'm just going to say this. When you're trying to ascertain feedback, primary sources are much better than secondary sources. The person he was responding to was a secondary source. They never played Shattered Space. They were getting all their information from reviews. They have no first-hand knowledge of the game. I hope Bethesda is discrediting and throwing out the opinions of people who have never played Starfield. And trust me, there are a lot of people who have never played Starfield that are very apt to provide feedback on this game, and they would probably never play Starfield either. even if they did the things that they wanted to do. They just want to participate in the discourse, which is fine. Like, by all means, you want to participate in the discourse, that's fine. But should they be considered as a good source for feedback for issues if you have never played the game before? I'm not talking about someone who played the game, didn't like it, and quit. I'm talking about someone who never played the game. If you've never played the game, you are not a good source of information of what is wrong with the game. I assure you this. I've talked to many people who hate Starfield, never played the game, and a lot of times their knowledge of it is secondary, and you can tell because it's a lot of hearsay, it's a lot of old information discussing bugs that have long been fixed, and a lot of errors as well, and misunderstandings of like how the procedural generation works. And this is not good feedback to design a game. Getting feedback from people who don't understand the game, don't play the game, and probably never would play the game. But let's continue on.
That is straight up delusional. There is no one who has played this expansion except the most hard-headed, troglodytic buffoon that thinks this is on the same level as Far Harbor. It's just not. Like, again, you might like the individual quest writing, you might like the art style, that's all fine. But there are things we can quantify, things we can look and count and add up and compare, where Far Harbor is just objectively more impressive than Starfield Shattered Space. It just is. And again, pretending as though that's not the case is just ridiculous. He goes on.
So I'm going to take up his challenge on quantifying. As you saw, I showed that screenshot from a long playthrough of Far Harbor. I watched sections of it. It is a full playthrough, and they are exploring kind of like how I play, and it is a very comparable main quest length. It was about 11 hours in length. I'm going to end somewhere around 12 hours in length, but I'm going to go ahead and put together a full review. And it will contain spoilers because apparently we need to have this discussion. And I am going to be comparing and contrasting the objective facts about both Far Harbor and Shattered Space. So we'll be looking at length of quests, all the side quests, how many different POIs there are to explore, and we'll be making a comparison. Now, this is not going to count subjective things like, did you like the story better? Did you like the dialogue better? We can't do that. That's kind of subjective. But the things we can quantify, I will go ahead and do that. And we're going to see if it's comparable to Far Harbor. I already know the answer because I played Far Harbor, and I've actually played Shattered Space. I didn't just run through the main quest and go, I did it. I'm playing the side quests. I'm actually exploring. I'm actually going through the dialogue. And I'm finding, like, I'm 20 hours in on it. I haven't beat the main quest yet. I've done, maybe like 8 or so side quests. So we will see what the full comparison is, but I am suspecting if we quantify it, there is more bang for your buck out of Shattered Space. Now, I am not saying that the story is better than Far Harbor. I'm saying if we put pen to paper and add up all the points of interest, all the different side quests, the main quests, and like how long it's going to take an average person to go through it, you are going to get more bang for your buck with Shattered Space opposed to Far Harbor. Later on in the video, he says something about, it being $30. Far Harbor was $25 when it came out. You adjust for inflation, it's about the same price. It really is. It's about the same price. Like, this is just ridiculousness. And I'm telling you, there is a good 20 hours worth of gameplay in Shattered Space. Easily. If you like to explore, there's probably closer to 30 hours of gameplay. If you're like me and you really like to explore and you'll actually explore the procedural generation, you're probably talking about 60 hours of gameplay, because they did add new procedurally generated points of interest, and it's going to take a while to go through them. That kind of exploration is different. I understand people don't understand how to do it properly, and they get confused by it, and they get agitated, but I enjoy it. So maybe I'm the only person that enjoys the procedural generation and exploring in there. but like if you understand how to do it properly, it is an enjoyable experience. But let's go ahead, let's move on to another clip where he basically says that the fans should do the exact same thing they did with, Cyberpunk 2077. So let's get into that.
You know what happened when we fans of CDPR got Cyberpunk 2077? We got really upset. We said lots of very, very blunt and, dare I say, mean things about that launch because it was straight up criminal in how they sold a broken game to people and hid it away so people would still buy it without realizing how bad it was. It was horrible, and we held their feet to the fire. And you know what they did? When they got that pressure, they fixed it. They put out an expansion that was wildly impressive. They actually did the work to try and earn our fandom back. And have they done that fully? Probably not. They still need to do a good amount of work leading into The Witcher 4 and all of that. But as fans, we did not coddle them or pretend as though everything was great and fine and hoopty-doody. Everything built up into this pressure that was applied to them so that they could make changes that they needed to make.
I remember what the Cyberpunk fans did. Yes, they threatened death on the developers. Let's not encourage people to act like the Cyberpunk fans. I don't think they probably helped in the process of developing that game. Let's just retract that. I'm going to forget you said it. And let's move on.
It's basically a speech at Infinite, which was like a game developer conference thing where a bunch of developers came in and talked about their experiences. And it's from a speech where he was talking about the process of writing in these games and crafting a game that players will like and love. And I just want you to take in how he finishes out this speech. The full speech is about 41 minutes long. I recommend you check it out because it's quite profound in how he handles stuff. But just listen to how he finished out the speech, and I'll let it play.
But that's not the end, though. That's not the end of being a video game developer. Because the true mark of being a real developer is, as every developer knows, is waiting for reviews to come in.
Waiting for reviews.
And then reading the reviews, of course, and hopefully, if you get lucky, ignoring the reviews.
It's a joke. He's trying to be funny, which is fine. But I think it reflects a broader sentiment, which is that if the money comes in, if the game makes money, who cares about the reviews? And that explains so perfectly the problems with Bethesda Game Studios.
So we're taking a look at this video up in the top corner of my screen. I'm going to link it in the comments below. It does a breakdown of a lot of the demonization and vilification of Emil, which is tragic because he seems like a completely nice guy on Twitter, like a completely normal dude, posts like once a day, and it's usually very vanilla pudding kind of stuff. So it's kind of sad to see like people demonizing him and taking things out of context to make him look like he doesn't care. And furthermore, jokes are things that we don't mean and we say to be funny. So I'm not sure if he understood that about jokes, but we don't typically mean them. But let's move on.
And that's fine. I'm sure you are hearing from people that love it and eat it up. But one thing I have heard and seen a lot is that a lot of people feel as though if you don't like Starfield, you are a Bethesda hater. People have asked me, why do you make so many videos on Starfield? Why do you cover BGS so much? It's because I'm a fan.
So 4 years ago, he answered that in a video entitled The Problem with Gaming Journalism. It was a very insightful video, and I thought it was very honest of him and straightforward. It seemed like the true Luke Stevens, in my opinion, in his honest opinion upon gaming journalism. I'm going to go ahead and play a quick video from that segment.
I don't think it's any mystery that if your channel is built on negativity and calling out terrible companies, you're probably going to make videos that nonstop criticize Bethesda, EA, Activision Blizzard. They're all very easy targets, to be perfectly honest. And then you occasionally do a video that praises and hypes up like Cyberpunk. And you do that you're pretty well and truly set for a pretty successful gaming YouTube channel. However, my problem with it is that the industry is far more complex than that, and I don't think the industry is as formulaic as that. I think you got to have the integrity to call out the bad when there's bad, but also to call out the good when there's good, not just ignore it because it happens to come from a firm or a company that you don't actively support or that doesn't drive as much attention and positive clicks.
I'm going to make sure to link that in the description below. It's an awesome video, honestly, and it doesn't have nearly as much views as it should, in my opinion. I think he was calling out a lot of critical things within gaming journalism. Apparently it was true 4 years ago. I wasn't really involved in gaming journalism at all as a participant or a consumer of gaming journalism. So I kind of wonder what the heck changed over the 4 years. And also, I'd like to make it perfectly clear, you're allowed to not like Starfield. The reason why I'm making this video is because we're vilifying, demonizing the company of Bethesda and Emil. And not only that, this is extremely destructive for Discourse, because I've seen it since the launch. All the different fan groups on Facebook or Twitter or what have you, they're loaded with people that have Starfield derangement syndrome. They may not have ever played the game, or they might have played it, at launch, and they're not currently playing it, and they wish to voice their opinions about it, and it bogs down the discourse, because, you have some Yahoo sitting there complaining about a bug that was fixed 6 months ago, or they're complaining about stuff that never functioned the way they think it functions, and it's just tiresome. It's really tiresome to deal with that kind of stuff. And I see, individuals being harassed online because they want to post, a screenshot they took from a video game. And it's really sad. It's just sad. And this negativity is really impactful upon the discourse. Particularly, there's a lot of great work being done in the modding field. There is wonderful things being done in fan groups too, with virtual photography and all the like that, and it's just sad to see it kind of get bogged down in this discourse. It'll eventually dry up. It always does. After we'll hit a dry spell, and then there'll be a lot of modding work gets done and everything. But you know what, let's hear from our man Lucas about how journalism hurts discourse.
The point is that these guys, they make their channels on discussing gaming topics and the gaming industry, but overwhelmingly their content is always negative, because negativity is what gets the clicks, and they focus entirely on that. And I would hope that they would have the integrity to recognize this reality, because I think eventually you kind of get blinders on and you lose sight of what's actually happening. You're making all this content, you're just pumping it out, getting tons of views and making a good chunk of change while you're doing it. And you kind of lose sight of the fact that, I'm kind of a negative Nancy. I'm a Debbie Downer. I'm actually bringing down the quality of the discussion that we can have as gamers in this community, because now if I ever compliment EA, all of my viewers are going to get on my case for praising this terrible company that did the huge scandal and just did terrible things. And
so he's describing the impact from a journalistic perspective on YouTube. I'm experiencing it more as a fan who covers some mods and makes maybe some guide videos and stuff like that. But I know its impact is everywhere in the Starfield community, with basically just terrible discourse, absolutely terrible discourse, and it's because we get people that want to participate in the discourse and they don't know about the game at all. Their knowledge of the game is secondhand, and they're coming in to participate in the discourse, which is fine, but their participation in the discourse is all negative, and a lot of times it's factually incorrect or old information, and it's not helpful to what's currently going on in a lot of the Starfield communities, where we're discussing mods and what we would like to see done in the modding community to improve the base game. In particular, we could go on for a long time about how the procedural generation isn't being improved. I've actually done a video, I'll put it in the description. It's Bedlam Dungeon Randomizer, which randomizes the positions of NPCs throughout the procedurally generated dungeons, mixing up the combat. So there is work being done to refresh and revitalize those recycled and reused points of interest in the procedural generation. Not to mention, others are putting new points of interest into the procedural generation. So there is a ton of work being done here around the procedural generation. I know the initial commenter on Emil's post, his primary concern was the procedural generation. I don't know if he's even looked at any of the mods that are out there that address this issue. There are several of them, and they do a pretty bang-up job of addressing it and making sure that things are fresh and new. Of course, there's more work that could be done, and that's the point of Discourse. We sit there and talk and spitball ideas back and forth. A modder hears it and goes, hey, yeah, I can make that happen. And he goes and does it. It's a wonderful thing. But all this negativity, it bogs down the discourse. Because now we're sitting here talking about whether Shattered Space is good or bad. It's just a DLC. You don't even need to get it. I'll tell you right now, you don't need to get it. If you like Starfield, you'll enjoy it. If you don't like Starfield, you might enjoy it. If you want like a nice narrative approach, I mean, you could get the Game Pass for like $5 or whatever it is, pay the $30, you'll have like 20 hours worth of gameplay. If that's enough for you, there you go. It's a pretty good deal. But like a lot of this journalism where we are vilifying members of Bethesda and demonizing them, this is like toxic discourse. This is absolutely toxic. The coverage of BGS since the launch of Shattered Space has been nothing but like absolutely toxic and vilifying discourse, and it's like I almost want to go silent on the internet for a while and wait a month for it to cool down, but I think I'm just going to point it out and just point how bad it is. Like we have Luke Stevens here, not even mentioning that Emil was responding to another tweet from a person who didn't even play the game. That's the level of discourse we're at here. We have people complaining to fans, to employees of BGS that did not play the game. They have secondary knowledge of the game. That's it. Like, he spoke in completely general terms. He didn't mention any issue specifically with Shattered Space. There was no specific issue other than, the procedural generation in the base game needs addressed. It's being addressed. It might not be from BGS, but it's being addressed. Like, this is just, it's just toxic and it's not productive. I hope it ends. But to move on, why am I concerned about Elder Scrolls 6? I'm concerned about Elder Scrolls 6 because I'm concerned that this is going to continue and it's going to impact my ability to enjoy the game, because I'll be trying to get into different fan groups and discuss the game, maybe discuss mods coming out for the game, and we're going to have a whole conversation about why the game sucks, and it's going to be all started because a bunch of gaming YouTubers wanted to make sure they got the necessary clicks and views to keep the lights on in their house, which is rather annoying if you ask me. This is extremely annoying. I just really wish, if you're going to call yourself a journalist or put news in your bio on YouTube, that you hold some journalistic integrity and report all the facts instead of omitting some so you can slant a story a certain way to drum up a lot of drama and clicks. In my opinion, This whole entire matter was not even worthy of reporting. This is not news. This is some, person that's suffering from like Starfield derangement syndrome, hasn't even played the game, and is complaining to a BGS employee about a game he's never played. This is just silly. Why are we reporting on this? Like, are we manufacturing drama at this point? It feels like this is manufactured drama to drum up views. But you know what? Let's just end it here. Luke, could you please close me out?
The stats are pretty clear. Of the people that watch a video like this, about 7% of them are subscribers. The overwhelming majority of people watching this video right now, maybe even you, probably even you, are not subscribers, but you've watched my stuff before. So give it, hit the subscribe button. It doesn't hurt anything at all. Plus, then you get more videos like this and some.
Thank you for closing me out. Look, you did an excellent job there. I'd just like to say that I have no ill will towards Luke. I think he's a nice guy. I don't think anyone should be hunting down his videos and posting nasty comments. He is a drop in the bucket of a sea of Bethesda haters. There are 1,000 channels 10 times worse than his. Where, trust me, my algorithm's been feeding me nothing but them after I started searching them out and finding them. And there is a god-awful ton of them, and they get views. They get a lot of views. They take things out of context. They have no problem doing that to vilify and demonize BGS employees because a game's not going in a particular direction they want, which is typically a direction that sold less games and was less accessible to broader markets. They typically uphold games like Morrowind and Fallout New Vegas, which are very difficult to use, very difficult to play. They have complicated systems. I adore them as well. I absolutely adore them. Morrowind's got a special place in my heart, but they sold a lot less copies, and it's for a reason. If you have a modern gamer play Morrowind, they're going to get stuck. And they're going to get stuck for a very long time. It's a difficult game to play. But just to further reiterate here, probably the only way we are going to stop negative gaming journalism is we stop clicking on it. Stop clicking on that thumbnail that says, this is the end for Bethesda. Like, just don't click on it. If they stop getting views, they'll stop producing the content. They're just reacting to their analytics. So, if they get views, they're going to produce more of that content. If they stop getting the views, they'll stop producing the content. It's that simple. But I really do appreciate you watching to the end, and you know what? I hope you have a good night. I know I will. Bye.